Thanks. Welcome.
Yes.
Oh, wow, impressive. Western's always here.
Well, thank you all for coming this morning. And I want to thank all of my colleagues, especially Leader Nesbitt and my fellow senator colleagues here for support of this initiative to announce this letter sent to Governor Whitmer demanding the immediate resignations of Colonel James Grady and Lieutenant Colonel Aimee Brimacombe. The Michigan State Police has become a chaotic and mismanaged organization, thanks to the corrupt and cowardly leadership of the people sitting at the top. The good men and women of the Michigan State Police troopers have been entirely betrayed. You all saw a few months ago when their union came out with a survey showing that 98.5% of all the troopers have no confidence in their leadership. Over the last couple of years, story after story has broken about the corruption, the ineptitude within the department, and I would like to highlight just a smidgen of the garbage that has been going on with this department. In Flint, the MSP post was turned into a circus. Commanders rigged the promotion exams, handed out test scores, played favorites, and punished anyone who did not fall into line. They destroyed careers and crushed morale just to protect their inner circle. That is not just a leadership failure, it is a total disgrace. And while all this was happening, Colonel James Grady and Lieutenant Colonel Aimee Brimacombe stood by and did absolutely nothing. Not 1 ounce of accountability, not 1 ounce of responsibility. They let corruption run wild within the ranks. Then there's the McMaster case. There you saw a Michigan State Police lieutenant working to frame an innocent man, hiding evidence, twisting reports, and weaponizing the badge. As a result, a federal grand jury just slammed the department with a $59 million verdict. 59 million taxpayer dollars gone because the people inside MSP abused their power and destroyed someone's life. And that's not just embarrassing, it's almost criminal. And what did Colonel Grady and Lieutenant Colonel Brimacombe do? They hid behind PR statements. They hoped it would all blow over. They didn't fix anything. They didn't fire anyone. They just kept protecting their own. Now we have Sarah Krebs, a 25-year veteran who gave her career to this department, was forced to sue her own employer for harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. She stood up to the toxic culture, and they punished her for it. Her duties were stripped, humiliating her and trying to silence her. That is how the MSP leadership treats honesty, integrity today. They view it as a threat. And it isn't just a rough patch. This has been going on, a complete collapse of leadership. The troopers have had enough. 98% of them, 98% have no confidence in these people. And that's not just a few disgruntled voices. It is the entire department saying, we don't trust you. When nearly every trooper in Michigan has lost faith in this leadership, the message has become clear. Everyone should understand it should be over. Yet, Governor Whitmer has done absolutely nothing. She sits on her hands while the state's top law enforcement agency burns from the inside. She has the power to clean house today to demand resignations of Colonel Grady and Lieutenant Colonel Brimacombe, but she won't. She's choosing to remain silent over using accountability. Well, we won't. Today, myself, the other senators here, we are standing with the troopers to tell the Governor Whitmer it is time to take action. Michigan State Police cannot rebuild trust while these two are in charge. Every day they stay, the department sinks deeper. Morale drops lower and the public trust slips further away. The men and women of MSP deserve leaders who have their backs, not boots on their necks. They deserve honesty, integrity, and courage, not cover-ups, corruption, and excuses like we have seen. The troopers have done their jobs. Now it is time for the governor to do hers. Governor Whitmer, clean house. Force Colonel Grady and Lieutenant Colonel Brimacombe to resign. Restore integrity to this department and give Michigan State troopers the leadership that they've earned. Because right now, the only thing standing between the Michigan State Police and the respect they deserve is the failed leadership sitting up there at the top. And now I would like to introduce Leader Nesbitt for a few comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Runstead. Appreciate that. Appreciate you guys coming here. Boy, folks are going to make it in Michigan. We got to make sure families are safe. And this is a paramount responsibility of government, is making sure that our families, our kids are able to make it here in Michigan and making sure that they're safe. Unfortunately, right now, with the leadership in the Michigan State Police, with Colonel Grady, Deputy Director Lieutenant Colonel Aimee Brimacombe, we see that 98.5% of state police troopers, frontline state police troopers, have no confidence, zero confidence in the leadership at the Michigan State Police. And this is squarely on Governor Whitmer. As governor, she's the one that appoints the colonel. She's the one that drives the department. And at the end of the day, she's responsible for this mismanagement. Let's be clear, I do not fault the brave men and women that go into the office, get in their cars, investigate crimes, protect victims every day. These brave state troopers that are out there. What they need more than ever is competent leadership. Leadership that's able to drive the department. But the vote that we saw earlier this year, the vote was damning, an indictment of Whitmer administration. It's undeniable that we are facing the worst leadership the state police has ever seen. And this is built up on top of years ago when the media and others have been writing negative stories on policing overall, that there's been real recruitment issues of folks going into it. I was talking to a state police trooper this morning. Said there's been a long line of folks in the state police. The best recruitment tool that they have are state police talking to young people to actually get into the profession. Their kids, their nephews, their nieces, and others. And you're not seeing that right now because of the leadership. So Colonel Grady, Lieutenant Colonel Brimacombe, they must step down. If they refuse, the governor, which they have done over the last few months, the governor needs to fire them. We've seen the dangerous effects in recent weeks of elected leaders siding with criminals and violent protesters instead of standing beside law enforcement officials. We've seen ICE facilities are being gunned down as a direct result of the onslaught of the attacks made by the far left radicals seeking to eradicate our brave law enforcement officers. We've heard calls to defund the police at the expense of the very people who protect our communities. These are fathers, mothers, brothers, and sisters, and we cannot continue to let the governor ignore the concerns of our brave officers. Victims deserve better than this. A recent audit identified thousands of potential errors in the Michigan Sex Offender Registry that's maintained by the Michigan State Police. 25% unverified addresses, missing convictions, and 80% of users lacking access to authorization forms. The audit also revealed serious security and oversight failures. Victims here in the state deserve so much better. And this is on top of reports that Colonel Grady violated Michigan State Police policy and ethical standards just last year, rewarded herself a $10,000 performance bonus and nearly a $10,000 performance bonus to Lieutenant Colonel Brimacombe. What was the governor's response? Nothing. Crickets. Swept it under the rug. Claiming civil service rules don't apply to appointees like Grady and Brimacombe. That seems to be a default response from this governor when you guys can even find her in the state. Good luck with that. There are credible reports of troopers alleging retaliation, fear of speaking up, and concerns about command structure under this leadership. Just recently at a hearing, Director Grady told lawmakers that there was no serious morale issues. No serious morale issues? 98.5% of state troopers have no confidence in that leadership, and that he does not trust the accuracy of the troopers and command officers union survey. And this is who's leading the state police. There have also been discoveries of Brimacombe's disciplinary records and reports of mistreatment of employees, including allegations of promoting officers with without regard to qualifications and sexual harassment. Troopers should feel safe to speak up. They should have confidence in their leadership. They should have confidence in the command. They should feel like their leadership has their back. And we're here today because we have the troopers' backs, those on the front lines. So let's be clear, the families are going to make it here in Michigan. We're going to make sure that there's a new colonel, the state police, there's new leadership there. And I know somebody who's served in the front lines, somebody who now is digging in, and I have to give Representative Mueller real credit with not backing off and standing down. And I'd like to turn it over to Mike to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I don't have anything prepared because I lived this. 25 years ago, I became a police officer, and I worked side by side with Michigan State Police throughout those 25 years. I was in a critical incident in 2009, a shooting, and the first people on scene were the state police, and I developed a relationship with these men and women over that 25 years. And now I'm in a position to have their back, and that's what I'm doing. The leadership of Colonel Grady and Lieutenant Brimacombe is appalling. Like the senator said, the vote of no confidence between the Command Officers Union and the Troopers Union is overwhelming, with 75% participation rate. They don't even get that when they have union meetings. I'm going to keep this short because the two senators basically hit the nail on the head, but you can't treat people the way that Lieutenant Colonel Brimacombe and Colonel Grady do. Just for instance, Colonel Grady made it through his FTO program back at Adrian, and I interviewed his first FTO. He said he was a nice man, but just didn't get it. And good for Colonel Grady. He persevered, he made it through, he climbed the ranks. However, the FTO that got him through that program was Lieutenant Colonel Dale Hens. Lieutenant Colonel Dale Hens was a lieutenant colonel in charge of all of post operations. Every trooper in the entire state was under the leadership of Lieutenant Colonel Dale Hens. Colonel Grady gets promoted to colonel. Lieutenant Colonel Hens gets demoted, or in their words, the civil service rules allowed for this, all the way down to the assistant post commander in Pawpaw. That's unacceptable in a paramilitary organization. What I'm asking for is, actually, we shouldn't have to ask the governor for these two to resign. They should look in the mirror and do what's best for the department and look out for the boots on the ground, because what we're here for is we're not here for the lieutenant colonels and the colonels and the upper command. We're here for the boots on the ground, the troopers that go out every single day. And that's what they have lost sight of. They have lost sight of where they came from. I've never lost sight of where I came from, and I'm here, and we're here to back the troopers. Thank you.
Quick questions. Yeah, I think that's something where we need to put everything on the table that's there. Unfortunately, what we've seen out of the Senate Democrats is that there's a real lack of having the troopers back right now. You've heard none of the Senate Democrats calling the resignation. I haven't heard have you heard of any of House Democrats doing the same? They seem to be circling their wagons on a complete lack of mismanagement and ethical treatment. And I have to hand it to the Detroit Free Press for having covered a lot of these stories. Lawmakers describe Michigan State Police as sinking ship, blames top leadership. I mean, Michigan State Police in turmoil amid Flint promotion scandal, high-level departures. I mean, these are issues that are out there. They're being covered. It's important that they're covered. And unfortunately, what we've seen out of folks from the other side of the aisle are crickets and just circling the wagons around Governor Whitmer and this lack of leadership, protecting our troopers and protecting law enforcement and making sure that we have their back, and also for not having the backs of crime victims.
Senator, so what you said, the survey's been out in June, and we've had sort of controversies in the light since then. By the way, I'm always involved. You guys are used to me.
Is he okay?
He's good.
Okay. That's good.
Administration. But so can you just talk a little bit about why now? Why have this event now? Why talk about this now? Why not talk about this earlier this summer?
We did. Nothing's happened. They continue to ignore it. We're going to continue to talk about it until they resign, until he's fired. This needs to happen. It needs to happen yesterday. It didn't happen because it didn't happen yesterday. We're here today. We'll be back tomorrow, next week. we're going to continue to push this. And I just have to salute Representative Mueller for, really stepping up and getting to the bottom of it and continue to work that way. And thanks for Senator Brunstad's leadership on this. But we've seen no action from this governor, and you've seen her. She's traveling around the world and around the states to try to get a comment from her. Good luck.
And anyone who thinks this is something brand new is not paying any attention. I have had press conferences, press releases, speeches. This has been going on for years. I mean, this is not a brand new, this is like we've come to the end of the line. There is just, what we address is just a small part of what's going on. I have never seen in my entire life a department that is so crashed and burned at the leadership top could never survive this kind of lack of confidence of the entire department. 98.5% have no confidence, and it doesn't matter what they do. Every week, the free press comes up with another scandal, and she just buries her head in the sand. She just doesn't care.
And so we talked about, the possibility of legislative recourse, which doesn't sound feasible. And, being realistic, the possibility of the governor stepping in and saying, what you're right, we're kicking them out. Doesn't sound feasible.
I'd interject. I'd push back. What we've seen from this governor time after time is that when you see Detroit broadcasts go after her, she actually responds. We saw that during COVID when she said she was using science and data, but we knew she was using political science and polling data to make her decisions. And we see this time after time that as she continues to be the social media darling, social media star, the only way that she'll back down and actually enforce stuff is if you guys actually cover it and bring it up.
My follow-up then was going to be, has anyone, then whether it's with the troopers unions or you folks, looked into if there's any legal recourse that the troopers can take to have their voices sort of in the situation and represent their issues?
Well, you've seen coverage of some lawsuits recently on this. So
My discussion with the union leadership is they're all terrified. They work for the MSP, and as mentioned, the way they have it structured, if you step out of line, they can take you from Monroe and put you up into Muskegon or up into Marquette, Berkeley or Marquette. They can put you in Monroe. They can move you all around. They can bust you down. They're all terrified. They can stand together on their expression of the lack of confidence in the vote, but individually, if they step out of line, everything I've heard is they are crushed.
And I'd like to add one thing is they have contracts, 2-year contracts that used to be for like majors and above and lieutenant colonels. And what the colonel,
why don't you come over here? Make sure.
what the colonel is doing, and I can't divulge what information was brought out in the depositions that we had, but what it appears to me is that he holds these contracts over these people's head. These people have lives, and they're on 2-year contracts. And if they speak out against the colonel and they're on these 2-year contracts, they can be moved, like Lieutenant Colonel Hensden. Captain Deasy, he was in charge of the TAD department and internal affairs, and he held Lieutenant Colonel Brimacombe accountable. Guess what? As soon as she got promoted, guess where he is? Working at home and demoted down to a 14. There's captains. The captains are on contracts as well. It was supposed to be done as a good thing, but underneath this leadership, when you have someone that has the power and control issues, now you have 16 captains that are underneath the thumb of the colonel. If they push back against them, they have fear of being removed from their position. Who wants to live like that? And you don't treat people like that. It's a paramilitary organization. It has to have a command structure. And what's good for them, it better be a lot better for the troopers, because you know what? They work for the troopers. But in this instance, and in this administration, they're working for themselves to have their own FAC and their own retirements. And it's absolutely disgusting what's going on, and it needs to stop.
Where is the House investigation at right now? We're hearing a lot about that before. What's kind of over? Is it still going on? Where are you at?
Well, it's never over, because there's more things that come up, and just like the Inspector Krebs lawsuit. I mean, she's a chief DEI officer for the Michigan State Police, and now she's suing the department because of the hiring practices and the ethical promotions and demotions of the colonel. And like I said, during these things, it's even though something may be legal, it doesn't make it ethical. And when you're in charge of a paramilitary organization, the state's top law enforcement division, and they used to be one of the top law enforcement agencies in the country and well respected. And in talking to the leadership of the union, they're a laughingstock within the country. And so, you know, the investigation is pretty much over. We still have to, you know, publish the report. Our general counsel is working on putting that together. And as soon as that is done, we will make that available. I've talked to Chair DeBoyer in oversight. We're coming up to, you know, we had my hearing in oversight, and we're gonna, you know, see if the colonel will come back in and explain, you know, what he has done to better his department since I've had that oversight hearing, which I don't really see an improvement. I see a steady decline, like the Senator Runstead talked about the McMaster lawsuit. I'm the chair of the Appropriations Committee. They settled that for $9.5 million, and I didn't even know about it out of last year's budget. So when the colonel puts out a doom and gloom letter to the troopers because the House Republicans are defunding the police, then they come up with $10 million for a lawsuit. That doesn't make sense to me, and I'm the chair of the budget. I've asked for internal investigation reports. For instance, the training captain over at the academy, I asked the internal investigation report on that because Colonel Grady was the principal. It took me over 6 weeks, multiple emails, and finally I had to reach out to the governor's office and say, hey, the colonel is obstructing again. I have a long paper trail of emails requesting certain things, and they just don't give it to me. And I'm the chair of their budget. We should be having a relationship where we sit down and talk, because I want to make the state police better. I want to, you know, I came into this for the morale, recruitment, retention, and integrity of the department, and that's what I'm going to leave it. That's why I'm here, is to have their back, and they need to do the right thing. And I just remember a conversation I had with Governor Whitmer on a bill that was very controversial that, you know, a couple years back, and it was about the pension repeal. And again, these guys, the police, were the ones that were benefiting from this. I stuck to my word. I was consistent. And yes, I was the only Republican that voted for that. You know, and I had a call from her and said, Mike, follow your heart. You know, and I did. Because even though I had a lot of pressure from my colleagues, I still cared about the boots on the ground people. And I've been consistent all the way through. Now I'm asking you, Governor, believe in me, believe in your troopers. And if you call for the resignation, the morale will instantaneously go up, and you'll have a state police that you'll be proud of.
I have a good question for Representative Baylor, if that's okay. In this budget, were you able to do anything in terms of maybe accountability measures, maybe put the heat on leadership in the MSPTA? Do you have any budgetary money in regards to that?
Well, it was quite interesting because I sat in a room with Senator Hertel, and, you know, they delivered our targets, right? And he and I agreed that they should have 3 unclassified positions. Well, it goes to conference committee, and all of a sudden there's 7. So there's no accountability there. The reason why we wanted to have 3 unclassified positions is so that the colonel can't move people up that aren't qualified into the upper leadership of the state police. So you have an unclassified position for the colonel, the lieutenant colonel, and the director of MPOLs. Now you have 4 more. So who is he going to promote above somebody else and put in that position that will further demoralize the morale of the state police? So that was one thing I tried to do, but again, after it went to conference, they added it back in. And that's, you know, again, that's accountability, and they can do whatever they want. They have no accountability. He reports to the governor, and it would be interesting if you FOIA the report from the training captain investigation, you'll see information in that report that he's taking orders from the governor to diversify the department. Well, it's good to have a diverse department, but you can't ruin the integrity of the department to forcefully diversify. And that's the orders he's getting from the top, and that's what he's doing. But at the meantime, it's destroying the complete morale of the state police.
You all have mentioned the upper ranks of the state police are 2-year contracts. That's an issue because those contracts can be historically speed out. But go into the legislation to change that, or that's that way to the leadership and take away the top grassroots ability to do things like that.
Isn't it unfortunate that we're even in this position? That we have a colonel that is putting us into this position? I think it's a disgrace that what we're seeing out of this colonel in this department and this governor is that you're having to go ahead and look into ways to how do you micromanage this department, because the morale sucks at the state police. Let's put it where the blame goes. The blame goes, the buck stops where it does. with the colonel. And so we're going to continue to put that pressure on to make sure that he either gets fired or resigns. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.